Hello to practice session week 7. Uh, week 7. We need to finish up sequential images. Okay, sequential images, After Effects. This was about you being more confident, starting to be more confident, depending on your skill level, how you entered it, to deal with images in time. To complete that, to finish up, we need to brush up our understanding of animation. Okay, animation is the study of anima, of the soul, of breath, of motion, of the illusion of motion. Okay, so motion is an illusion. We need to get more familiar with this illusion, how this illusion works, and underlying this illusion are two big words. It's called timing and spacing. Timing and spacing. These are animation terms. This is a book here I recommend to you. That's basically what I pick out to show you that I have it part of my resources in the practice animation folder. The link to it is underneath this video. It's Richard Williams' The Animator Survival Kit, a manual of methods, principles, and formulas for classical computer, games, stop motion, and internet animators. So all of you that deal with the image that moves, this is the book. This is the Bible on animation. If you work through this book, you don't need any other book regarding motion and movement. Okay, and I pick out the two most fundamental concepts of this book, and this is timing and spacing. These are a little bit strange and challenging if you try to understand it for itself. At the beginning it took me a while to wrap my head around it, but it's super easy. Okay, so let's go back. So animation thinker, he's a theorist as well as a practitioner of animation. Richard Williams defines timing and spacing as the two basic elements of animation. Okay, so timing is where the beats of the action are, and spacing is the distance between the in-betweens of the beats. Okay, so let's digest that. Okay, there's something that has to do with time, has something to do with space. Really here, spacing is just a version of time. Okay, let's if you have an action, an animator sees this action as composed of beats, and these beats are the extreme keyframes of a beat, right? So this is when something moves, the big beats of this action is where the position from where it starts moving and the position where it arrives to. These are those two important beats, and the spacing deals with what happens in between those beats. Okay, so timing is where the beats are. This object here moves from here to here. Okay, so this is the timing. Now it is here. Now it's there. That's the timing. Let's say at 0 it's here. 1 second later it's here, and 1. Okay, and spacing deals with what is in between those two beats. Okay, that maybe sounds a little bit theoretical, but let's look at that. Okay, so here we have an empty After Effects project. I will make a composition. It doesn't matter much. Here's my standard go-to HDTV. That means 1080 by 1920. My standard go-to is 24. Like in the book, the animated survival kit, it's usually always has is about 24 frames per second. Okay, and I say this should be 0 by default, and I say my duration is it 2 seconds long. Okay, so it makes my composition, and now I can see here in the frame in the timeline I have 1, 2 seconds. Okay, and here's 1 second. Now I will create a circle with the shape tool, and I click anywhere, I press my shift, that's proportionally, I have a small circle, I replace this, color it differently just for the sake of it, doesn't really matter. I make sure that the anchor point, so by selecting the anchor point tool, put that kind of in the middle. So, and now let's move this so let's say, okay, so this, let's do the timing first. We usually do the timing first. I say at the beginning of this animation, the position, press P, that's a shortcut, press the stopwatch, it creates a keyframe. This is the first beat of my timing. At frame 0, this is here on the left side of the screen. After 1 second, I say, I drag it all out to the other side. And it automatically creates the second keyframe. Okay, so this is not the timing. The timing have those 2 beats, those 2 keyframes, spaced out 1 second apart. Okay, so this is how the animation looks like. And if I investigate it, let's give you okay, so let's give you a better resolution. So what did it do? In this case, I set the timing by placing those 2 keyframes, 1 and 2. After Effects made up the spacing. So After Effects made up what happens between those 2 keyframes. And I can see that the spacing, what happens, those interpolated keyframes in between, those little tiny dots that are difficult to see in my recording, I guess, for you. But what happens in between those 2 keyframes is a linear interpolation. That means at half the time, so the half of 24 frames per second is 12 frames, it's at 50% of the distance. Okay, let's see. The half of the distance should be here. Where should the middle be? So if I now go to frame 12, it should be exactly in the middle. Yeah, that looks right. So this is a linear interpolation. So the spacing is linear. It's a linear spacing. Now I can change the spacing. Let me. That means I have a copy underneath. Okay. Let's keep the same timing and only change the spacing. The one underneath, I will not change the interpolation. From linear, I go to Bezier. Let's see what it did. So it doesn't look differently, but if I go in the graph, okay, let's understand the graph editor. That might be tough to understand at the beginning. So when you go to the graph editor, which opens with this icon in the timeline. You can see, and you click on a property that has keyframes. You can see the linear interpolation by seeing that the x value, so the value that goes from left to the right, has two different parameters, and what happens in between is a straight line. It's line linear. Okay, so I now start changing those things. So I select it and now select, see, so this would be linear. This is how it looks like. I can change to hold. No, it does not allow me. Why doesn't it allow me that? Because I need to select it first. Okay. So now you can see that there's no interpolation between. Let me get out of the way. By flipping from linear, which is the default how After Effects interpolates, I go to hold. This gets rid of the line, and there's now no interpolation. That means, okay, do you see it? So both balls have the same timing, meaning frame 0, both balls are on the left, and frame 24, both balls are on the right. But the spacing is differently. One ball has linear spacing, that means it's proportionally each frame is equal distance apart from the frame before and the frame afterward. So this is how a machine would move. And the second ball jumps. So it stays at this position for the whole duration until the next keyframe switches on. Okay, so this is the same timing, different spacing. Let me create again. Okay, now I select and see what else we have. We have linear, we have hold, and we have auto Bézier. Let's see what that is doing. That does nothing because it does not allow me to select me. Let's click there. Okay, so see the difference now is I have a straight line, I have a step, and now I have curves. On start and end, the line is now curved. So it looks like flat, and it slowly gets steeper, and then slowly gets back to being flat. And let's play that and compare that. Okay, so the number 3. Let's get rid of this one. Not that one. Okay, so what's the difference? So the difference is the difference in spacing is that one. Then the new ball that has a curve in there, that has a Bézier, a curve interpolation, starts slow, accelerates, and then slows down. And by doing that, it gives it a much more a natural feel, so much more curved feel. Okay, so animation starts when you start taking charge of these splines. So let's stop this. Make another copy. and I will now select these and click this button here. So what that allows me is now each keyframe, those two, get now those Bezier handles, and now can start tweaking them. So I will now, let's see what I make. Let's make it super slow start. Okay, so can you see that? This is now at frame 0, it's at the beginning. Frame 4, it's still at the beginning. 8th frame, it's still at the beginning. And then slowly it starts moving. Frame 12, it's still almost at the beginning, but it moves towards its aim. And then at the end, it speeds up. Okay, so let's feel it. See that? So it has the same, all those 4 balls have the same feeling, but a different spacing. Let's make even another one. Nope. Nope. Okay. Ah, come on. Let me select you. Okay, whatever. So let's get those handles again. So let's do something else. So what can we do? So let's say it has a super quick start. And then slows into the aim. And in animation terms, these are ease in and ease out. So let's say it shoots, but then it's oh, that's too much. Okay. So this one now has a super quick start, but it eases in to the end. It shoots out and eases in. The previous one eases out and shoots in. Okay, let's what can we do with that one? Maybe let's overemphasize ease in and ease out. So it starts slow, ends slow, but in the middle goes crazy. Okay, let's see what that does. Okay, so it starts slow, then accelerates in the middle, and then eases into the start. So it goes slow, fast, slow. Okay, and all those 6 balls have the same identical timing, meaning those important beats, the important keyframes of the action, have the same timing 0 frame and frame 24, 1 second later. They have the same positions with their main timing, but the interpolation, what happens in between those big extreme keyframes, this is super different. Different to that degree that this motion starts to feel completely different. Okay, so let's have another try. And what can we do? Yeah, this is a weird one. This is a weird idea. So let me prepare. Tap, tap. So what I now will do is I make a sequence. I make now the same animation, but not using keyframe interpolation, but doing it with stop motion. So I will take one layer, one ball, and cut it. So this is when I have the shape selected. I go to a time, I press Control Shift, I think D. Yes. And now I just copy paste that one. And let's see, I sequence those. Good. And say so make something weird. You'll see. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay, so now I did the same thing. Okay, but I did it by hand. So I also now made a very used timing and spacing principle. Also, my last ball has the same timing as every other ball. At the beginning, it's on frame 0. At the end, it's 1 second later. It goes from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. But the what's wrong here? And but this time I did not use keyframe interpolation. Keyframe interpolation is computer graphics animation. Okay, so doing it by hand is stop motion or even hand drawn. But the same principles still apply. And here my interpolation, my spacing was, it starts a little bit slow and then super accelerates to the point where it distorts and has a motion blur kind of thing, and then just swooshes into the end. Okay, and this is when real animation begins, when you start to really taking control on all the different aspects of moving images. So when you look at Richard Williams, he goes further into this detail, But the thing is, some of you, maybe you do more illustration, hand-drawn things in and some of you don't, but it's still in both cases the same principles apply. And this is a great book that goes through that. So even if you say, oh well, I don't draw my animations, my stuff when I want to move things, I let them be interpolated with some software in between. You still should check out this book, which is like just incredible. Okay, and just to reiterate on the and here the principle of animation is, you can see that each ball just shows up for, in my case, 2 frames, and then the next ball is blended in, and that exists for 2 frames, and so on. And this is what it is meant with animating on 2s. I have 24 frames per second. If each frame is visible for 2 seconds, I animate on 2s. And 50% of the images that show up in my end at the end, 24 frames per second, only half of those I actually touch. So this is here for 1 second, for 1 frame, 2 frames, and then another image comes in. Okay, so this is also maybe something complicated for some of you, animating on 1s versus animating on 2s, and depending on what the emotion is, this is another topic. But most important is at the beginning, and most complicated maybe to understand at the beginning, is timing and spacing. And you see it's actually not that complicated. Okay, so all of you that have images that move in time, timing and spacing is for you to have a look at. Timing and spacing is for you to think and apply and develop your sensibilities for motion. All of you that have animated images, you need to rework and reinvestigate your motion with Richard Williams' Animator Survival Kit in head. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything further because these basics carry you pretty far. We have sequential images. We looked at importing images into After Effects, Illustrator files as well as Photoshop files. We looked at the basic navigation in After Effects. We looked at maths and masks, um, working with vectors, um, vector paths, shape layers, converting Illustrator layers into shape layers, um, exporting image sequences as well as movies. Um, we looked at what a movie is made of, frames per second, and now we closed that circle with the basics. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing beyond the basics. If you get the basics right, you get everything right there is. There's nothing beyond the basics. If you nail timing and spacing, you will nail forever every moving pixel that you will ever animate. It always comes down to timing and spacing. There's nothing else to that. So really thinking about the motion that you do by considering this timing. Timing is where the main beats of your action are positioned in time. So time is a position, time is space in our case, yeah. And spacing is how that is in between those main beats spread out. As the beginning, the first in betweens, do they have a lot of time to settle around? If so, it will the motion will feel like it starts very slowly. If a lot of frames collect at the end, it will feel like it slowly settles down. It slows down at the end of the motion. Okay, so consider timing and spacing. Dive deep into Animator Survival Kit. It is a survival kit. It's the Bible. And think about how that applies to your moving images, and also what it tells. The most important thing is you do something and then you ask yourself, what is that telling me? I cannot say this interpolation is good, is better than that. It depends on what you want to say. If you say you want to express stress, sadness, happiness, powerfulness, powerlessness, and so on, you would pick different keyframe interpolations. Okay, so therefore it's very important for you that you are clear in your intention as an artist, and then you investigate what is the best techniques, what is the best way to express those things. And that is why I keep asking you to define and talk about your research question. Okay, so your work towards animating images will be about a lot of sitting down with the graphs and tweaking them to get the feeling for those things. So that's it for these sequential images. It's about timing and spacing and taking it serious. Do not underestimate this topic. Of those of you who submit something that's animated, that moves, I will point you back on your timing and spacing, and will test you and question you on the intention and the underlying feeling that you exhibit with timing and spacing. Okay, good. Thank you. This is it. Wish you a lot of luck regarding finishing your assignment too. We see you in the next step when we go into interactive images. This is when we want to control those images with user input, etc. in our next weeks to come. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye.